Hey everyone, it's Justine and welcome to the first day of my collaboration series this month in April. If you want to know more about the series, I did a live yesterday that you can check out that explains all the details. Today I'm collaborating with my friend Nikki, who is on the Tonic design team, and we are looking at alcohol ink backgrounds and ways to use them. So a lot of the times people were saying they were making these beautiful backgrounds but didn't really know what to do with them when they were done. So I'm going to be exploring 8 ways to use these alcohol ink backgrounds, and when you're finished watching my video, be sure to check out Nikki's video. She's showing off additional and different ways to use them, so be sure to check that out. The link is below in the video description. Before we get started on what to do with the ink backgrounds, of course we have to make a few backgrounds to see what they're all about. So I'm going to be using some alcohol inks here and some of my favorite combinations. So this one here starts off with Amethyst Alcohol Ink, and you can see I'm just kind of tossing it on here, followed by Purple Twilight. I'm not squeezing my bottle in any way, I'm just letting the liquid come out. Then I'm going to add some coral, and this is just going to break up a little bit of that purple color. And then the last color I'm going to be using in this part here is Wild Plum. Now this one here makes a really pretty and beautiful background. And so one of the things that you can do with your background is blow them around. So you could use a plastic straw, or if you're a fan of the environment like myself, kind of wrong hobby to be in when I do that, I use a pen tube. So I took apart a pen that was no longer working and just used that all the time. And I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit more here and there. The paper that I'm working on today is 5x7 yupo paper, and I'm hoping to get probably 2 cards out of each background for most of them. Depends on the technique that I'm doing. You can go back in and add in areas whatever you like and fill in any white spaces. If you don't want to have any white spaces, it's completely up to you. You get some really nice close-ups of my face. Just to mention too, they don't take long to dry. A minute or 2 usually does it, depending on how much you put in on here. And I'm going to be using my favorite blue combination here. This is starting with turquoise, followed by pistachio. I love pistachio. It's one of my favorite colors, and a color I invested in quite a bit later. This one here is very dark. It's stream. I like to be kind of sparing with this one because it is quite dark and overwhelming. Then this one here is Sailboat Blue, another one of my favorites. And I noticed that this one's not available as often in shops, so I think I only have a couple links below to that one. And then lastly, I'm going with some Limeade to just bring out some of that green color. I'm going to add these once again the same way as before. And then I'm going to add a touch of aquamarine as well, but I think that it was pretty similar to some of the other colors, so I don't think it was completely necessary to add this one. And I'm going to blow some of these around as well. Same technique as I did before. And I'm going to show you how you could take that even a step further. So I'm going to add the same colors as I did before to this sheet of yupo paper. I'm not going to show me doing it because you've seen me do it already. However, this time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and add some blending solution. You can also use some pure alcohol for this. That would work as well. I'm going to spread it on my cardstock, and you'll see it kind of repels the ink a little bit. It just breaks it up and gives it such an interesting texture again. So you can go ahead and blow around all those liquids, add a little bit more, and it's going to create these sort of puddles that have that interesting texture to them. And then for my next technique, I'm adding some to foam. I'm adding some Dandelion, Sunset Orange, Valencia, and then a little bit of gold. So I'm squeezing the bottle, squeezing the tip directly into the felt. And just by adding a little bit, it goes a long way. So you can do lots of different things. I like to dab these and kind of move my tool a little bit from side to side as I'm going along. You get this really fun sort of marbleized look that I really like. And you'll notice that just from the ink that I used before, I can cover the entire background and then some. So it really is just a little ink going quite a long way. So I just finished off the background here, and you can see it has some really pretty shine to it since I add the gold. I will give you a little bit of a warning though when using gold, silver, rose gold, those metallics, that you do want to add very little because they do go a long way and might overwhelm the paper that you're using. The next technique also uses the felt, and it's just a simple swiping technique. So once again, I added the same colors as I did before, and I'm going to show you the difference between the two of them. So the last one you saw, it creates a very textured background, but if you just go in and you swipe from side to side, you can cover the background very quickly, but of course you don't get as much texture. So one of the things that you can do is, of course, you can foil your alcohol ink background to give it a little bit more interest. So when it has a sticky texture, when you add a lot of the ink, it's usually when it's the direct to pour option that you're going to get this. It'll look sticky, like a syrup, almost as if you left a drink with juice and it spilled and you left it overnight and it's got a sticky look to it. That's when you can put your foil on top and then use the bone folder over top to smush it in, and it'll get that beautiful foiled look. Also, just a quick tip, when you're cleaning your surfaces with alcohol ink, hand sanitizer will take everything off of a non-porous surface. So I tend to use that and then just a microfiber cloth, and it cleans everything up so nicely on the Tim Holtz glass mat. Now this is probably the easiest thing that you can do. Just simply cut down the panels and use them for cards. And if you find to be more of a clean and simple card maker, you can cut down your rectangles to not just be a 1/4 inch smaller than your cardstock, but really a significant amount. You could add as small as a rectangle as you want to your cards. So this one here, I simply cut my yupo paper in half, so it is a little bit smaller than it would normally be on my card panels. I did end up cutting my card panel down as well, so that it really gave it a nice border. It'll have a nice thick border when I add it to my card base. I went ahead and I used the leftover piece to die cut this sentiment die from Birch Press. This is the Love die, and what I love about this die is it cuts out these very thin, delicate letters, and it cuts out a shadow box around it, and it has score lines for perfect placement of the letters, so I just glued those down, and create such a really pretty card that is very simple. You can embellish this, of course, with sequins or nouveau drops, as you wish. Alright, so a thing that you can do with your background techniques is do an inlay or a 2-for-1 card. I'm going to be using the lovely Blossoms die from Concord and 9th, and I am going to be using them to die cut. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to line up these hexagons and then add my sentiment and my hearts to the middle so that they're all ready and in order for the die cutting. And I'm going to die cut these using a white sheet of paper. You can see them using a scrap piece of paper that was stamped on the back that I never used. And I'm going to also die cut the same thing using the alcohol ink background. And I'm using my Gemini Junior die cutting machine to do this, but you can use a Big Shot, Cuttle Bug, whatever you like. So I have two card panels already here that measure 4 by 5 1/4, and I have my dies already ready to go. And you can see that the purple tape I used to hold the dies in place hold them together quite nicely and don't rip my yupo paper when I'm all finished. And I absolutely love that. And I'm going to save every piece that I just die cut. That's important. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use some liquid glue and apply both of the white as well as the alcohol inked die cut. This is kind of like a frame in itself. It's one piece and it has the You Are Lovely with the hearts, and I think it looks so cute. And with the alcohol background, I think it's just striking against white cardstock. And we're going to be using the alcohol inked sentiment that was die cut as well as the hearts to put them inside this white die cut panel as well, that I'm going to add to the second piece of cardstock. Then I'm going to add liquid glue on the inside of each of the areas, such as the hearts, the sentiment, and everything like that. Don't be shy with the glue. And I'm going to grab a pair of tweezers as well to do the small areas, but I'm going to fill in the large areas first. So the You and Love start on one piece, and these two are separated. And I absolutely love the way that both of these cards turn out. I am going to use the white You Are Lovely as well to fill in the alcohol ink background. I'm going to grab each one of these hearts too and just place them in the center. When you're doing the card on the left, it's completely up to you whether you want to fill in any of those white spaces with the white cardstock. It's not really necessary. I would suggest doing the You Are Lovely so that it's easy to fill in the alcohol inked areas inside the O and the Y and the A, you know, the little bits that cut out, but it's not really necessary to do the hearts. So again, I am going to go in and fill in the areas that still need the alcohol inked background, like inside the O, because I think it just looks so much more put together when it's all finished. The last thing I'm going to do is I am going to add my card panels to my card bases, 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 bases, and then they're all going to be finished. So I got myself a little 2 for 1 there, and completely up to you how much effort you want to do with the inlay die cutting. The next thing you can do is you can of course use them behind die cuts. So things like cover plate dies or any sort of frames that have a lot of negative space would be perfect. I'm going to be using the stained glass die from Catherine Pooler. It's one of my favorite cover plate dies of all time. I love the intricate detail. Now, if you aren't using an electronic die cutting machine like the Gemini, I would suggest putting a shim when you're die cutting this because it is quite detailed. But you can see with the Gemini how easily those pieces pop out. And I've used this in a video before that I'll link to below in the video description as well as in the information bar in the top right corner. So I'm just going to glue that down onto my alcohol inked background and you can see how stunning that looks. I'm going to be using a stamp and die combination from My Favorite Things called All About Mum. I love these sentiment stamps from My Favorite Things because they have really bold sentiments, often coordinating dies, and all of the little sentiments in the bottom fit with these little fishtail banners as well as the speech bubbles, so they're really versatile. This card also combines different techniques, and my next one is called Tone It Down with Vellum. So if you find the alcohol background a little bit too much for your taste, then I would suggest toning it down with a piece of vellum. So I grabbed a piece of vellum. It's almost like a clear, transparent paper, but it does have some opacity to it. And I die cut this with a circular die, so it had a stitching imprint around it, and I glued all of my elements on top. So I glued that banner, stamped the I'm so lucky to have you, I laid down the O first to get my centering correct, and I added the M's to either side. You'll notice when I add this to my card now, it really just tones down the background and really puts a focus on the sentiment, because this is a really busy card with that background going on. But vellum will tone down anything, and you can add it in shapes or you could add it over the entire card panel. It's completely up to you. The next thing you can do, of course, is you can emboss them. You can emboss yupo paper. So I got this really beautiful embossing folder from Crafter's Companion, and I absolutely love this. It's almost like a quilted look. And I ran that through my Gemini die cutting machine, and I have all this beautiful texture now on top of all the texture I had from adding the color. I think this looks really, really great, and it's a great addition to the card itself. So once I had this prepped onto my card base, I'm going to go into the next technique as well, and that's of course just to simply die cut it. Die cut elements out of your background. So I ended up using the background here, half of it, with that embossing folder, and then I grabbed this die from Tonic, the thanks die that has both an intricate little detail as well as the shadow around it, and I die cut the thanks out of that same alcohol ink cardstock that I prepped earlier. That way it ties the sentiment in and it has the same coordinating colors. And of course giving it that pop of white really just puts a focus on that sentiment. So don't forget that you can simply die cut elements out of it, whether it be sentiments or backgrounds or whatever you like. It's an easy way to do it. So thanks so much for sticking around to the end. Don't forget to check out Nikki's video below that has additional ideas and ways to use these alcohol ink backgrounds. Here's a final look at some of the cards that we created today with all of the different techniques that we used. Here at the end of the video, I also have suggested videos if you're interested in checking them out and subscribing to my channel. Thanks so much for watching. Bye!